Hi everyone and welcome back to Coachy TV. This video we're going to take a look at hill intervals and the progression in which you would do hill intervals throughout your macrocycle. We're really specifically looking at cross country. Most of the world is getting ready for their cross country season here as I film this on August 8th. Most people's high school or youth cross country season should hopefully be getting underway over the next few weeks here. So we're going to kind of focus on that a little bit, but really hill intervals should be done during your track season also. So this is very applicable to your track season with your middle distance runners, your 800 all the way out to your 3,200 meters if you're doing high school. If you're a college coach, your 5K and 10K runners would definitely benefit from this type of progression of hills throughout your macrocycle. So we're going to look at the very end, a fictitious macrocycle, and see how this fits in. And it's for this time of year, cross country, but you could project this out the exact same way in a track season. It would be very applicable also. So those progression of hill intervals throughout the macrocycle. So basically, we're going to be thinking about why would we do any hill intervals, any hill workouts of any type, and how do these different types and time of year affect the design adaptation. So it's not just that the reps are going to be different, the actual workout's different, but the time of year are going to be changing, and that's going to affect the actual training design. So what you are seeing here is a picture of one of our short hill interval workouts from the high school I work at, Wharton High School. During general preparation last season, this was the track season of 2020. Some of the things you might be looking at here is, well, wow, this isn't a super steep hill. And if you actually, and I'll show you clips from this actual workout itself, it's also not very long for these short hills, but there's also going to be medium and long hill intervals here, and they're all during very specific parts of the year. General preparation is the first part of the year where you start, and you'll get out to some other types of training as you get longer into your macrocycle. So let's get right to it. I'm College Akino, the head boys cross country and track coach at Wharton High School in Tampa, Florida, and I have been for the last 7 years. If you'd like a closer look at some of my credentials, they are on the screen.
So this is usually in the these types of videos where I'll go through and I'll talk about the race metrics and go through those different things. But as I said, hill intervals are not specific to any one race, right? It's something that can really help you in any of those middle distance or distance races from the 800 all the way out to the 10K. I haven't really looked at this for things like marathon training, but I'm sure there would be some applicable applications for that race too. So we're just going to think about more of the workout itself and why would you do any hill interval at all in a vacuum when you're sitting down planning your macrocycle? Well, one of the reasons why you would do it is you're going to be priming the athlete, either yourself or who you're training, for more specific work or the races themselves later on. That's a really key reason of doing hill intervals. It starts improvements in these race-specific strength, acid buffering capacity, and aerobic capacity, so things that are going to be very applicable to the race itself. So that's a very key reason why you would do any type of hill intervals, not just the specific ones we're talking about here. There's also this idea of the incline. It improves proper running mechanics. So I'll put in the video description down below the videos where I talk about short hill, medium hill, long hill, as well as some actual workouts so you can see what they look like too. So at least 6 videos in the description down below. But for all of these types, I would really recommend finding a 2 to 3% incline for all of these. Basically, the off-ramp of a freeway is the type of thing you're looking for. Don't obviously run up an off-ramp of a freeway, but that's the kind of thing you're looking for. And the reason is that 2 to 3%, and most people when they're doing hills, they're looking for something steeper, right? It's like, oh, the more steep the hill, the better it is. Well, if it's 2 to 3%, it means whoever it is you're training, will have proper running mechanics in a way that is specific when they return to flat ground. So this is not enough to change their, to have to totally, drive their knees up, really change their arm swings. Because if you do those types of things, if you have a really steep hill, 5% or something, 10%, that would be a very steep hill, you have to totally change everything about the way you run. And then when you come back to flat ground, it's not transferable. 2 to 3% is in a way that when they do go back to flat ground, it's really going to help them. And what this can really help is if you have kids that really don't drive their knees in a way that is going to be helpful for the race. And it's also going to those kids that maybe, or yourself, you have this problem, if you get your hands way too high up when you're running, that improper arm carriage, and maybe they even lean over with some improper posture. If you put this hill of 2 to 3%, you have to get your knees up. Getting your knees up is usually going to bring your arms down, and that kind of improves overall posture. So sometimes you'll see people who do things like stadium stairs and things like that too. I mean, that's all great. It's going to help you in terms of actual, strength gains. But this idea of improving running mechanics won't be helped if it's much steeper than 3%. So try and find one, and you should be able to. We're in Tampa, Florida, and we have, we're one of the flattest parts of the country, and I can find hills that work at this type of incline for all the 3 types that we're looking for here. So look around for it. You should be able to find it at some point in a safe and effective way for this 2 to 3% for those proper running mechanics. We also have this idea of the incline improves specific strength aspects, okay? So distance runners as a whole don't have to be strong in a lot of areas, distance and middle distance runners. But the areas that they are strong on have to be very, very strong. It has to be very specific because of all of the foot contacts, right? So this is a way of targeting the type of strength that's very specific to a middle distance runner, and the idea of it being plyometric in nature. When you're running up a hill, it's plyometric work in the same way that any jumps type work is going to be plyometric. So the plyometric nature of any hill run is going to improve muscle elasticity. Okay, so the idea being, and I've talked about this in different plyometric workouts we've talked about before, basically if you get this idea of muscles to be, this muscle elasticity is basically springiness of the muscles, the idea that your foot contacts the ground, you're strong in this elastic way that the energy comes back to you, so you get more back what you give to the ground or the track or whatever it is you're running from. A couple studies have bared out that people that are better, have more elastic strength, get 10 to 30% of the energy for free in whatever race they're doing, so they can save it for the critical zone, the last 25% of whatever race you're doing. So that's a really key aspect of that incline, creating specific strength gains for your middle distance runners. So that's very generally speaking about hills, the benefits of them, but there are obviously different hill types throughout the year that you're going to be doing. And while the hill types do have similarities like we just talked about, the different length and desired adaptations needed for different parts of the year do create some key differences in these different types. So we've got short hills, as I mentioned, medium hills, and long hills already. Let's take a look at some of the things that separate these 3 hill type workouts. So short hills are done during general prep. Pretty much that's the only time you're going to be doing them. You really should not be doing them later in your year. This is your summer training in track, basically about the first half of your training year. This is your winter training, summer training in cross country. This is your winter type training in track. Reps are obviously short, so say 120 to 200 meters, about 25 to 45 seconds is sort of the design of this. Primary goals: not get too far away from fast running during general prep, and it's really easy to default to just long, slow distance. Tempo runs really are not fast. Even VO2 max runs really are not fast running. They're fast aerobic running, but they're not fast running, and you can't get too far away from fast running, even as a distance runner, even in the summer training, and that's one of the really important things here. And I put fake speed in here. As you've seen from videos I've put out before, speed training is alactic training. That's only 6 to 7 seconds, and as we said here, this is 25 to 45, but you're going to be doing some of the stuff that you do in those alactic fly 30 type workouts that I've really talked about in the past that make the sort of quote-unquote fake speed during the general preparation phase. And you're going to have that specific strength we talked about, muscle elasticity. So those are the primary goals of short hills. But you have some secondary goals too. We want to improve running mechanics. We talked about that. Overall coordination. Running up a hill takes more coordination. And I'll show you, I like to do this. It works for us that we can do this actually on a grass type hill. So they have to have more coordination. That's going to be specific for, if you're doing cross country and that kind of thing. High heart rate. One of the things, if you watch the video in the description down below, halfway through, and at the end I have them check their heart rate. We're looking for high heart rate, which I would classify as anything over 180 or 30 beats in 10 seconds. That high heart rate is really indicative of also the last part here, improved force production. So the idea of your body being able to work at higher and harder intensities for a more sustained period of time. That's one of the things that short hill intervals can do here. Moving on to medium hills, this is a workout that links general and specific prep. I talked about this being a bridge workout, both in the video in the description down below and in the video where we talk about the science and training design behind this. You do this at the very end of general prep and then at the beginning of specific prep. That's where this is. It's going to link these two parts of the year. The reps are going to be medium in length, 300 meters to about 400 meters. I wouldn't go longer than 400 meters, and you want them to be about 60 to 90 seconds. If you have kids, even on the short hills, if you have kids that can't do it in 45 seconds or 90 seconds for the medium hills, just have them stop when they get to that point. You don't want them to do much longer than that based on the time of year you are and what you're trying to get out of with these workouts. Primary goals, we're going to start working the anaerobic glycolytic system. And those of you very in-the-know scientific type distance coaches might think, well, that's a red flag if we're in general prep here, right? And the idea of acid accumulation. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. But we do need to start working the anaerobic glycolytic system as we go from general to specific prep, so that when we're in specific prep, we can do more workouts that really stress this energy recharging mechanism with things like Special Endurance 1 and Special Endurance 2. It helps us get to that point. And we still have that specific strength aspect. These are still relatively fast. Short hills are faster than medium hills, but we're still going to get that muscle elasticity here because it is still fairly quick, and you've got that plyometric nature of running up the hill. Some secondary goals, we are still improving the running mechanics, right? We still have the force production here. And now this is sort of secondary, this idea of not getting too far away from fast running, fake speed. Especially as you get these into specific prep, you're doing actual glycolytic work also. You're doing the fly 30s like I've talked about in previous videos too. So this becomes more of a secondary concern in this time frame when you're going from general prep to specific prep, because you're starting to do more truly fast type running on a more regular basis. So this now becomes a secondary goal versus a primary goal with the short hills. Let's look at the long hills. This is the same thing as how medium hills link phases. Long hills link specific prep to pre-comp. So the very end of your specific prep, getting into the hardest training, which is during the pre-competitive phase. Reps are 1,000 meters to 1,600 meters, provided about 3 to 5 minutes. If for some reason you had somebody that could not really get to 1,000 meters, and even if you just think that's too much in 5 minutes, again, same thing as before, just have them stop at that point. It would be really tough for a high school kid, which is obviously who I train with, to get to 5 minutes of an incline of 2 to 3%. Even my best runner right now, who's a top 10 in the state kind of kid, typically gets to about 1,400 meters in 5 minutes. But that's the basic range you're looking for here if you're looking for a hill. And again, even in Tampa, Florida, well, not really Tampa, Florida, we have to drive a little bit for this hill. We have to go north, either to a town called St. Leo or a city called Brooksville. But even us in Florida can find a hill like that that is uphill for 2 to 3%. So I would definitely recommend finding it. It's a very critical workout. Primary goals, this improves race-specific aerobic ability. Now, my distance coach is like, well, that sounds great. Race-specific aerobic ability is exactly what you want. Essentially, this is almost like fake VO2 max. I would say this workout is most linked to a VO2 max type workout. And if I have to get a long hill workout in and I don't have space in my 9-day microcycle that I've kind of recommended for this time of year, I am actually okay not doing VO2 max for a cycle, truly VO2 max workouts, if I've got a long hill in here, because it's very, very close to the same thing. So that's why I say fake VO2 max. And specific acid buffering capacity glycolytic system here. So the idea being is long hills are going to very much simulate the acid levels they would be experiencing in a lot of these races. The 5K, the 3,200. If you wanted to even shorten for more of a middle distance runner and do these a little bit shorter and a little bit faster, the acid level would get a little bit higher. That's a great way of doing it too for maybe more of your truly maybe just 800 meter runners that can't really do a 1,600 meter. You're short, or maybe you're 800 meter kids and that kind of thing. So very specific acid buffering capacity is a primary goal, as well as the specific aerobic ability of long hill intervals. And secondary, we're still going to be improving these mechanics. The hill is going to improve at that 2 to 3%. Proper running mechanics, specific strength, force production. Some of these things you've seen in the secondary goals are going to be consistent all the way throughout, simply because of the nature of these hills. They kind of fluctuate a little bit, but that's the idea. As you can see, the big difference here is the time of year you're doing these reps, obviously the length of the reps, and that's going to obviously change what the primary and secondary goals are of these hill types. So it's going to continue. So just to sort of continue to articulate this point, you probably could figure this out, but just to sort of articulate this idea of where do these hill runs sort of fit in with some other workout types that we've talked about here in the past. So the short hill is most closely linked to anaerobic alactic work, which is all the way out here. I've included some of more just kind of glycolytic type of work because, as I'll talk about in the next slide where we talk about acid levels, there definitely is a little bit of glycolytic component here, but don't freak out. In general prep, it's going to be the right amount of glycolytic work, but it's most closely associated with anaerobic alactic or fly 30 type work. Medium hills, I would say, are most closely linked to anaerobic glycolytic work, or right in the middle of glycolytic work, right? But the hill is going to prevent the accumulation of acid. I'll talk about this a little bit more later on. But this is your special endurance 1, really special endurance 2, intensive tempo, extensive tempo. You're really not going to probably go fast enough to be really special endurance 1, but it might get close to it at that point. So, race pace in the mile, the 800, a little bit, 2K, maybe getting close to 3K, something like that. That's where this sort of fits in. And then long hills most closely linked to VO2 max aerobic power type work, which is right in here. So the idea being is as you get further into the training year, you get more specific to what's important to these different races here. So especially in cross country, you start way out here when we're just dealing with generally getting ourselves prepared for more intense work, and then the nature of these gets you ready for this other type of work later on, the true glycolytic work. And then our VO2 max aerobic system is super strong. Well, now we can add some hill work in it here too. VO2 max is very closely tied to success in the 5K and the 3,200 meters. And I haven't talked about this in a lot of videos yet. When we get to the track season, I certainly will. It is still very, very important to success in the 1,500, 1,600 meter and the 800 meter also. That importance really falls off when you start getting to the 400 meter, which is really like special endurance 1. It's not unimportant, it's just less important than it would be in the other. So that's sort of the idea. As you get stronger, more aerobically fit, you can do more of these things that make these workout types make a lot more sense for that time of year. So that's where these all fit in on an energy continuum, which the source of this is the USA Track and Field Distance Curriculum. So last slide before we look at how this kind of fit into a fictitious macrocycle and show you a couple clips from some videos, and I'll put the full videos in the description down below. Some of you distance coaches might have been, wait a second, general prep, I don't want acid accumulation. Why are we doing anything that works the anaerobic glycolytic system? So, but what about that acid accumulation? Well, let's talk about that a little bit here. You may think, and many people do think, that hills will increase acid accumulation. It's just sort of intuitively you would think that, right? Well, I'm running up a hill, I'm going to be working, much more hard at this point, and isn't that going to make me have more acid? But that's not always true based on the length of the hill and the recovery of the rest interval in between. So the incline is actually what is going to reduce the intensity or the speed of each rep. That is going to prevent more acid from accumulating. Now, it is going to create acid, as I've talked about in videos before. You just watching this presentation, you're accumulating acid just sitting there or whatever, right? So it's not that this is going to prevent acid from forming. If you stop forming acid, your aerobic system will not work properly because your mitochondria need those acid free hydrogen ions to make their work, to make energy in the mitochondria. But the hill is going to reduce the intensity so that it will not accumulate in the same way that acid doesn't accumulate on a tempo run because the intensity is lower. Now, if you were to continue to do this, say for some of these different specific times at the inappropriate time of year before you're ready for them, well, then it could accumulate. But you follow sort of those steps, and the hill, along with the right time of year and the relative fitness of the athlete, is going to prevent the acid from accumulating, okay? Then if the reps were done on flat ground, if you did short hill interval reps, but you decided to, do them on flat ground, that kind of intensity at this time of year, that would be a horrible idea in general prep. They would not be prepared for it. Or if you decided to turn around and do it downhill, that is an awful idea in general prep. Absolutely awful. The athlete will not be prepared for that kind of super intense work. Overspeed is what it's called. They will have so much acid, they'll just be swimming in acid, and they're going to really not adapt very well to it. So that's the idea. The hill is actually what is making this workout safe in terms of acid accumulation, as well as just the fact that they're not ready for that sort of speed. They will have muscle fatigue, though. In the video in the description down below, it's the first medium hill workout we did this year, and they were sore the next day. They certainly were. But the muscle fatigue it's not usually based on acid, provided the athlete was prepared for this type of work. You didn't do too many reps, they weren't too long for them. You didn't do medium hills before they did short hills. The fatigue, they're going to feel some muscle soreness, but it's going to be a result of those muscles increasing that force production we've been talking about, not acidosis. And the idea of it being at the right time of year, the video that you're going to see down below in medium hills, there's going to be a group of 3 girls who joined us only about, maybe 7 to 10 days before we did this. We had done one short hill interval with this group, but they were not ready for medium hills, so you'll see I adjusted it for them, because if I had thrown them right into this on their second hill workout, they would not have been prepared for it. So that's part of it too. It's not just the time of year, it's also the athlete too, and when they're prepared for it too, so keep that in mind. So the differences of these are based on the idea of, and so as I was just saying, the differences are based on the hill length itself, but it's also the athlete fitness level here as we look at these 3 different types. So as we said, we do not want acid accumulation in general prep. Acid is going to be produced, as we said, don't be afraid of that, but it's the accumulation. We do not want that in general prep. It's going to start the timetable on something we don't want to start until later on. Short hills, okay, the idea here is the incline reduces the intensity. We talked about that. That, mixed with the short nature of the reps, means the acid will not accumulate, provided you're also giving the proper rest interval. If you only give them a minute in between, well, now it will accumulate. I recommend 3 to 4 minutes for the rest interval here. They're going to get the alactic system back after 3 minutes. This is a good rest interval. If you want a little bit more training design, video in the description down below on short hill intervals. Now, medium hills during general prep, the incline again reduces the intensity. And at this point, because as we look at it, you're going to have probably done about 6 or 7 of these before you do any of these, and they've been running for probably about, 8, 9, 10 weeks. So that reduced intensity of the hill, and at this point, they're going to have a very improved aerobic system because of everything else they've done in general prep. This is the last maybe 2 weeks of your, say, 10, 11-week general preparation phase. So the improved aerobic system at this time, again, the athlete fitness determines a lot of this too, will help push back the acid accumulation. They've got a very robust aerobic system, or a pretty robust aerobic system at this point. The mitochondria are going to be using the acid so that it's not going to be accumulated. As I said, if you have somebody that just joins the week you do medium hills or a week or so before, you're probably not going to want to do this. You're going to want to keep them probably at short hills at least for a little bit. They're going to get right on the edge of acid accumulation. In fact, the video in the description down below on medium hills, that's kind of what a lot of the kids were saying about it. Is like you can feel it. The acid's getting very close, like on a good hard tempo run at the very end. But with proper active rest interval, it's going to reduce. I recommend 5 to 6 minutes. I would say 6 is better, along with this improved aerobic system, the time in between and everything. It should not accumulate. It'll get very close, and then you push it back. And then you do the next rep, and it gets very close, and you push it back. So that's sort of an important thing here too. And what I usually do, and after the first medium hill we did a long run, and they were reset by the next day. And in fact, I'll put this in the video description down below. We did a Fly 30 workout in which all of these kids, or a lot of these kids, 2/3 of them ran either the best time of the year or the best time of their life. So, the idea of medium hills work if it's at the right time of year, the athlete is fit enough to actually accomplish them. Don't just throw somebody into this because they joined the week you're doing medium hills. So later on, we do want this race-specific way of having the acid level in specific prep and pre-comp. So at that point, when these last few medium hills you're going to be doing that are in specific prep, it is going to be priming that anaerobic glycolytic system. That's what we want in specific prep. Of this kind of work, as we talked about, it's very associated with Special Endurance 1, Special Endurance 2, intensive tempo. Long hills at the end of this specific prep and in the beginning of pre-comp, these hills, the increased extent, 3 to 5 minutes is definitely longer than 60 to 90 seconds, of these reps means acid will accumulate in a race-specific way. We talked about this. And it helps with that acid buffering capacity to a level that the race is very race specific. So the idea being is we're now at the beginning here, we do not want any acid accumulation, especially here at the very beginning. We're not getting too far away from fast running, and it's very short, so it's not going to accumulate. We're going to move to medium hills. We're getting to the point where we might want to start thinking about acid buffering capacity, but we're not really there yet in general prep, and because they've got a nice robust aerobic system, they're going to push it back and you're going to give them a good rest interval. Well, now we're in specific prep. Well, now we do want acid to start to accumulate a little bit beginning with medium hills and a lot bit with the long hills here at the end in a very race-specific way. So that's, if you're worried about the acid accumulation, hopefully this puts your mind at ease for when you don't want the acid to accumulate. But then later on in the year when you're doing these, these long hills and everything, you do want it to accumulate. So the idea is the nature, the hills progress with the athlete, and that's why they're so great, is they change throughout the year as the athlete gets more fit and the demands of that time of year also are altered. So let's go ahead and take a look at our fictitious macrocycle. Alright, so where could this all fit in a fictitious macrocycle, say starting at the beginning of June for the cross-country season? So if you would say this is your first week of general prep right here, well, I would jump right into it. Again, it's you don't want to get too far away from fast running. As you can see, first week of general prep, you might have a bunch of recovery runs, some long runs. You might have a fly 30 in there. I would definitely recommend it. Don't get too far away from fast running. Throw them right into it, and then you could have your second short hill interval, say the next week, about 10 days in between, something like that. You might have a week that does not have a short hill interval, so you're probably going to have things like VO2 max test. Again, you've got an alactic workout somewhere in there, a tempo run, but you're doing them pretty regularly. You would say more often than not. We've got our third short hill intervals, and you can see we start with 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7. Fourth week of general prep, you've got your third hill intervals. If you were to go to July, you've got in your fifth week, you've got your fourth short hill interval workout. And I talk about this a little bit more in the videos on the hill specifically in the description down below. But basically what you want to do is say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks of whatever hill type you're doing, and it can transition during that time frame. And then you want to go away from them from 2 weeks. I forget the name of the study that this is really sort of bared out, and it's in the other videos, or at least in the short hill interval videos. But if you do them in a 5-week block, whatever type you're doing, hopefully starting with short, then going to medium and long, you want to go away from them for 2 weeks. The idea being is your body then can sort of use the workouts that you just did, and then you can come back to them. So you're still doing some fast running in here. You've got your alactic work here and alactic here. If I'm ever in a 2-week down period, I want to make sure, from hills, I always want to make sure I'm doing fly 30s, because it can get really to be a lot of long, slow distance or medium type workouts in general prep if you don't put those in there. And then you're going to come back here and say week 8 of general prep, and we've got, this would end up being our 5th, I believe, right? 5th, 1, 2, 3, yep, our 5th short hill intervals. In week 9, we have our 6th short hill intervals. At this point, we're definitely cruising at 8. And then what I would do as you're starting to get to the end of general prep, as I said, 9 weeks of running, as I mentioned earlier in the video. Well, now we've got 2 weeks left of general prep. We need to start thinking about changing to medium hills. They're ready for it. They've got a good, strong aerobic system if they've been with you for the entire time. Time to start doing some medium hills because they've got a good aerobic system to do it, and you're going to get them ready for specific prep. So in this fictitious macrocycle, we had 1, 2, 3, 4. So those blocks of hills actually can be 4 to 5 weeks if you look at the study. In this case, I guess I decided to do 4. And then you've got your first 2 medium hill intervals in here also as you're going through it. So you had, 6 short hill intervals. We've got 2 medium hill intervals going on here, and then we go into another down period of no hills for 2 weeks. So that would be the first 2 weeks of specific prep. We transitioned into it. Now we're getting towards the tail end. We're in the 3rd week of specific prep, and we're going to be back into hills, and we've got our 3rd medium hill interval. Great. You don't have to do a lot of medium hills, but now is the time as you're getting out of specific prep to start adding long hills. So we did 3 medium hill intervals in this fictitious macrocycle. Went to long hills here in the 4th week of specific prep. I like a 5-week specific prep season. You might have it to where it's 4. That's sometimes recommended with some of the literature too. So this could either be considered, again, that bridge in between the two as you're doing this. So we've got specific prep, long hill interval 1, long hill interval 2, long hill interval 3. I would like to do a 4th one. I was looking at, our schedule here in the state of Florida. The reason why I did not do another one here, you definitely would want to have more time in between this to do it at the beginning of the week, And there's a really important meet that would be right here the first weekend of October called FSU Invitational. It's also the pre-state meet for us, and it has a lot of hills on it. So while it's not truly a long hill interval, I want them to do reasonably well in this meet. I'm not going to have an easy week. It's still going to be pretty hard, but I don't want to throw long hills, which is probably the hardest workout of the week, or the hardest workout that they can even do. And they're also going to get some hill work by running on that hill, that race itself. I wouldn't rely on races to serve as your hill intervals very often. In fact, this meet right here on the 5th of September, Sepner Christian, is on a very hilly course. And I could almost call this serving as sort of another medium hill interval. If I didn't get it in here, I'm certainly going to get it in here as we're going through. So they're going to be getting a decent amount of hill work here in the next few weeks. There's not a week that doesn't have it. And then this pre-comp, as I said, if you wanted to consider this to be another last hill interval, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, again with that meet included. And then after that second week of pre-comp, so the first week of October for us, for our state meet, is scheduled for September 7th in Florida. You would not want to do them anymore after that point. You've gotten to pre-comp, you've linked these harder workouts, you don't have to do anymore. So that's one way you could do it if you think back to, say, the beginning of your general preparation phase here with your short hill intervals. Get about 6 of the short hills, get about 3 or so. It would be nice to get 4 medium hills, but 3 will definitely serve. And then for long hills, again, 4 would be better, but in this case, 3 with that one meet sort of serving a little bit as it is sort of the best way to do it while you're kind of playing everything out. So that would be what it might look like. Let's take a look at a couple of actual workouts, some clips from them, what they actually look like. All right, so we're going to start with short hills. I'll show you 2 reps of these, 2 reps of medium hills, and then 1 rep of the long hill. As I said, I like doing our short hills on a grass field, a grass hill. It's a really nice one that we have by us. You can see it's not super steep, but kind of take you through it. They're going to be going pretty quickly up this hill. It's about, I'd say about 180 meters to the very top. Our fastest runner typically gets there in about 25, 26 seconds, sometimes a little bit under in 24 if it's the last rep. And then just come all the way up to the top. Again, not super steep, but you can see there's really good arm swing, good knee drive, good mechanics. There's no lean as they get to the top of the hill. This next rep, I'm just going to be sitting here as they're going to run by. You can really see some really good arm action, knee drive, good mechanics as they get up the top of this. You can see there's no lean, there's no, there's good knee drive, good knee lift, there's good arm swings, really good mechanics as they go up this hill pretty quickly, especially at this time of year in general prep when usually they're doing a lot of long, slow distance. Don't get too far away from fast running as we've always talked about with these. So we'll transition here to the medium hills in 1 second. All right, so as you can see, this one maybe a little bit steeper. Again, this is a bridge over top of our interstate. We have a really nice area where it's blocked off where they can safely do this. So just taking them all the way to the top of this one. This is the one that we did about 4 or 5 days ago, our first one of the year. You can see pretty good arm swings. The young man on the left, a little bit higher than I would like, but still pretty good. They're not, back trailing a ton with their steps. They're driving their knees, getting it up in front of, getting their knees up in front of them. There's not really any lean. Really strong mechanics as they get all the way to the top of this hill. And again, it's a little bit steeper than the last one you saw, but it's still not super steep. But by about this part of the rep, they're absolutely feeling it. So again, that idea of getting right on the edge, right to the point where the acid might be accumulating a little bit, but then they've got this super strong aerobic system along with you're giving them 5 to 6 minutes in between to where they can push it back. I think these 2 on this one were something like around 61, 62 seconds on the first one. I start them in waves because it's a little bit shorter. This next one, I've got the GoPro on behind my head so you can kind of see them chasing after me. This is the last rep we were doing, so they're still going to have some pretty good form and mechanics as they get up to the very top here. Give myself a little bit of a head start on it so the top boys can have someone to chase a little bit. Really good mechanics here. You know, you've got this good knee drive. I think they did 4 on this first day, but again, really good posture, really good arm swings as they're getting up this hill. Just really adds some extra things to it. That some things on flat running might mess up mechanics just a little bit. So really like everything about how this plays into what you need from your athlete at this part of the year as you're going from general prep, from general prep to specific prep. About 2 weeks left in the season, or in the season. I'm sorry, in the phase that is. So getting to the very top of this. They are definitely fatigued at this point. The acid is getting very close to accumulating. We'll finish this rep up here, and then we'll look at a long hill interval. So one of the things I do tell them is when they're getting to the hills to try to be consistent with their actual reps. This is a one where we got a little bit of a downpour on us, and again, as you see this, and I'll let it play because again, it's a long hill interval. You know, again, it doesn't have to be super steep. It's just a little bit there. If you got to the top of the hill and you look down, you'll realize it's a pretty good hill, but as you're looking at it, it's not enough to really change your running mechanics. So again, you're seeing what I was talking about before, really good arm swing. You can't really see their knees from where they are right then. I clipped a little bit further into this rep because again, it's 4 to 5 minutes. You can kind of see the hill a little bit better here as it's more of a straightaway. And if you saw their knees, they're going to get the same thing. Really good knee drive. They're not leaning. There's good posture. You really can't lean all that much with this little bit of a hill. If it was more steep, you would see more of a lean potentially to try and counteract gravity a little bit. And as you saw, our top runner just got to the top of the hill, so he's going to stop because I do not want him to run down that hill, which would happen if he continued to go down it. He's already into his jog. Our secondary runner is going to get there. It's basically that pole that you're seeing. This is one of 2 locations we can do this for, and they're going to start their recovery jog. This might have been their last rep, but I don't know if they start the recovery jog here or not. So yeah, it must have been their last rep actually. And they get to the very top of this, and into that rep, you'll see some of the people are still coming up to the top. I think that may be me right there. So if I get to the top of the hill or I don't get to the actual time myself, I'm going to call everybody to actually stop. So that's the way it actually looks like in practice. I'll put full video, workout videos from all 3 hill types in the description down below, as well as those videos that talk about the science and training design behind all these 3 types. And again, like I mentioned, I'll put that Fly 30s workout that happened 2 days after our medium hill too, in case you want to see what they can do even a couple days after something as challenging as that. So if you like this video, please think about liking or subscribing or sharing it around. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments down below. I'm going to be doing a video here in the next few days on pre-competitive phase, special endurance 1 and 2 type workouts, things that you would want to be looking for those types. And after that, we'll take a little look at the peaking window, the competitive phase of your cross-country season, and then intermixed in between all of those, I'll have some more workout videos like I always do over the next couple days. So until next time, this has been Coachy TV.